Hi everyone, apologies, I started the last session and it cut out, so I couldn't rejoin it. So I've desperately been trying to get another link up. So I'm just going to hang around for a couple of minutes. Looks like, unfortunately, there's only like 27 people. I think there were about 70 on the last call. So I've sent an email out, so I'll just be checking over the next couple of minutes just to make sure. And there are no more emails about the session, but I've sent another one. Hopefully people should join this. Yeah, it's always the tech. A bit of a nightmare going live sometimes. But yeah, thanks for joining. So this is the second video in Foundation Week. So it's been great seeing loads of you leaving comments and enjoying the first video. So yeah, it's a broad kind of subject, this really. Beginners and intermediate players, covers a lot of kind of different levels. So it's quite tricky, but I think you agree we all need kind of foundational skills. So I've tried to kind of give a mix of all of those. So yeah, I'll just hang a little bit more. Can you just let me know in the chat that you can hear me fine? And I'll play just a bit of bass. So just check you can hear that. So hi Hamish. So yeah, I'm just kind of hanging around, hopefully waiting for more people. So you can have a little look. Yeah, you can put anything in the chat. There's often a bit of a delay, so it sometimes takes a minute or so for stuff to happen in the chat. But yeah, this is the correct link. So we will start on this link here on this video. So yeah, I'll just wait around for a bit more, a few more people joining now. Hopefully the email's gone through. So yeah, hi everyone. Liz, Mike, yeah, nice to see everyone. Yeah, wait around a little bit longer. So yeah, that's good. Hope you can all hear me fine. So yeah, I'll start at 20 past actually. Yeah. So remember that you can put any questions. So the second half I'm going to leave it open for Q&A. So you can put any questions in the chat, and I'll look back through those at the end of the video. Okay. Hi, Rafa from Spain. It's great. Okay, I'll just do a last check of the email, just see if there's anyone else stuck. Okay, a few more people coming in. So yeah, I'll start, and then everyone can. There is the replay as well, so we can all watch that. Luckily, so let's have a look. So yeah, this is GBS Bass Foundations Week. This is the live session. So in this session, I'm just going to cover just a short discussion on music theory. I'm not going to cover too much. Just going to kind of just chat about that, really, give you a few ideas to kind of work on if you're thinking about looking at a bit more theory. Then I'm going to answer some of the pre-session questions that I had already on the discussion board, and then I'm just going to open it up for general Q&As in the comments. So any questions relating to any aspect of bass playing, really. It doesn't have to just be about theory. It's the idea really of this session was to answer your questions. Okay, so I'll start now. So what is music theory? So music theory, this is an explanation I found online, serves as a set of rules and guidelines that musicians use to create, analyze and interpret music. Okay, but it's important to realize that these don't constrict you. Okay, because some people say they don't want to learn music theory because they don't want their creativity to be constricted by rules. Okay, rules don't constrain, rather they give you a framework and a language so you can record and share musical ideas with other people. So really the idea about learning about music theory is so you can talk to other people about music. Okay, if you don't understand how any of it works, then you can't chat, you know, at a rehearsal, or if you want to do a bit of writing with someone, if you talk about transposing a key. Okay, if you don't understand the basic principles of it, you can't do that. Okay, so I would say the main idea, especially for sort of beginner and intermediate players, is to be able to talk about music, to understand what you're playing and why those notes are working, rather than just kind of copying bass lines and not having any idea why they work and how to use those ideas in your own bass lines. Okay, so it's really to give you a bit of a language so you can discuss music. So these are things that I've heard or seen online. So music theory won't mess with your groove. I hear this a lot. People are kind of scared that, you know, it's going to kind of get in the way of being organic with music. That's not true at all. If you think about speaking, we can all speak, but we learn how to read and write. We learn how it kind of works a bit. It doesn't kind of mess with that. It doesn't interfere with your creativity at all. Okay. Sometimes you see artists saying no, they don't know anything about theory, and kind of they feel that's why they managed to kind of create whatever. But that's just not really true. For that, music theory will prevent this. Okay. Another idea is it stops your enjoyment of music because you're basically studying it. I've found that any knowledge really with music all the way along from when I first started playing, it's just enhanced music for me. Understanding it has kind of enhanced it for me, definitely. But it means I can always switch off and not think about theory when I listen to music that I'm enjoying, or in the moment when I'm playing. I'm not thinking about theory. Okay, I'm just enjoying music. So it doesn't mean that you always go around and start analysing things when you're listening to music. Okay, it just doesn't really work like that. And music theory won't take years to learn. Okay, it's very quick to learn the basics of music theory that you need. Okay, there we go. So a small sprinkling of music theory goes a long way. Okay, that's very true. So you just I'm going to discuss some of the basics that you need to learn, that particularly kind of essential for bass players. I mean, all music theory, all musicians need to learn it, but there are some areas that you can learn straight away that will help you with your bass playing. Okay, so what are the most important areas of music theory for bassists to learn? So scales, arpeggios and chord tones. I'll chat about these in a minute. Rhythm, very important, understanding how rhythm works. Keys, okay, what keys something in. Major and minor keys, that's important. Harmony, how chords and chord progressions work, very important for us. And then in brackets I've put reading and notation, because that's not strictly necessary at the beginning. I always encourage people to do it, but you don't have to. Okay, so I've just put those in brackets, but obviously being able to read and notate music is going to help you a lot. Okay, I'll just have a quick look in the chat. Okay. Oh yeah, someone put in the chat, so I was trying to work out that was Mike. It's a good idea. If you've got a question in the chat, just write question in capitals and then write your question. So it's easy for me to kind of look back on the chat. So that's great. Okay, so scales, arpeggios and chord tones. All right, there's loads to this topic. When we're talking about scales, I really encourage you to learn the major scale, because a lot of theory comes from that. You work out intervals, and then you can work out chord progressions. So all that from the major scale. So that's an important scale to learn. The minor, there are 3 minor scales. I'd say start with the natural minor scale. Okay, it just gives you an understanding of how you flatten the third, how you play a minor third, the difference between major and minor thirds. So that's a good scale to learn. And then really useful scales for riffs and fills and that kind of thing, and for kind of giving you shapes on the fretboard are the pentatonic scales and the blues scales. Okay, so this is what I'd focus on first of all. So I'm going to just show you everything in C to make it easy. So this is C major scale. Okay. Okay, so you've got your intervals there. So if someone said to you, in the key of C, I want you to play chord 1, 4 and 5. Well, you just count out the scale. So you start on C, obviously that's chord 1, 2, 3, 4 is F and 5 is G. So you can start to get chord progressions out of that. Okay. You can get intervals. If someone says, give me the major third on C, 1, 2, 3, you've got that third there. If someone says, give me the fifth, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, G, you've got the fifth shape there, sixth, second, you know, you've got all your different notes there. Okay. You've got a C on the top, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 notes. Okay. And then you've got your C on top. Okay. If we look at the natural minor scale, it's this. Okay. Quite a different sound to the major scale. So minor. Okay, so you don't use this as much for kind of chord theory for picking your chords and things, but if you look at this, the most important thing to remember from major and minors, that this is useful for chords as well, is your third. So the third note here, E flat, the third note here on the major scale, E. Okay, so you flatten a note, you flatten the third, which is going down a half step or a semitone if you're British. So the E just goes down a half step, which is there, and another place to kind of write it is here. Okay, so another place to play it. So E flat, there or there. Okay, it's the same note. Okay, so there, those two scales there to learn. There's your major and your natural minor. Pentatonic scales. Okay, so the major pentatonics used all the time. There are two positions for this. I'll show you the small one first on the right. That's the kind of that's a position really used if you're playing kind of bass lines from it. But a more useful for riffs and for licks and stuff is this position. Okay, penta means 5. So 5 scales, and tonic is the main note, the root note. So 5 scales built off the tonic. That's kind of what pentatonic means. You've got the C on the top, so obviously you can see 6 notes there, but you just that's the same note. So if you take the C off, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you've got 5 notes. Okay. Now the minor pentatonic, we flatten the third. Okay. And it's a different set of intervals. Okay, you can play the E flat here. Okay, you have to do quite a lot of shifting to do that, but it might be useful in certain situations. So you've got the major sound, the major pentatonic, and the minor sound. Okay, so definitely learn these two. Okay, and you can turn the pentatonics quite easily into the blues scales. So look at those diagrams there, and then we go here. Okay, now they're the same, you've just got an extra note. For the C major blues scale, you just add a flattened third, okay, to the scale like this. Okay, for the minor blues scale, you add a flattened fifth. You get this. Loads and loads of stuff built on the minor blues scale. Okay. Okay, and the major blues scale. Okay, and a really cool thing with the minor blues scale is you can use it over major and minor chords. Okay, the major blues scale really you kind of use over major scales. The minor blues scale over minor and major scales. So often when you've got a blues, you've got like a C7 chord, and you'll have a minor shape on it. Okay, you have a kind of minor blues scale shape. Lots and lots of riffs use this kind of minor shape. It's very, very common because that kind of note there is a kind of very bluesy. It's called the blues note. Okay, if you just see something written as the blues scale, then assume it's the minor blues scale. Okay. Or they might specify minor or major, but if it's not specified, then usually it means the minor blues scale. Okay, so these are the scales that I would learn. Okay, I've put them on a PDF, so I've got a PDF for this video, so you don't need to remember. I'm not expecting you to remember all this. I'm just kind of going through it quite quickly. Okay, arpeggios and chord tones. So an arpeggio is just where you play the notes of the chord one after each other instead of together. Okay, or you play it kind of together. It's a chord. If it's separately, it's an arpeggio. Another word, I think arpeggio translates as broken chord. So you're playing it one after each other. Okay, a triad is a 3-note chord or arpeggio. Okay, so triad from 3. Okay, so if you've got 3 notes in the chord, it's a triad. If you add the 7th in, it's a seventh chord or arpeggio. Okay, so you've got 4 notes. Okay, you've got the root, third, fifth, seventh, and then you've got the octave on top. Okay, I'll show you some in a minute. So chord tones, you probably hear this word quite a lot. Chord tones are notes of the chord. Okay, so just the notes that we just talked about in the arpeggio or the chord, these are called chord tones. As bass players, we use these all the time if we're constructing walking lines. They're really, really useful. Loads of bass lines use root, third, fifth ideas and seventh. Okay, so Black Magic Woman, that's root, fifth, flat seventh, octave, eh? Those notes are used all the time for different bass lines. Okay, so you can chat about those notes and say that they're chord tones. Okay, so you're learning, because as bass players we want to outline the chord. Okay, play the root note for a lot of it, but if we want to get more adventurous, then we're outlining the chord, the roots, the thirds, the fifths, and the sevenths. Not as much the sevenths, apart from walking lines, and sometimes the bass lines like that. But we use these chord tones, so they're really, really important. I'll just have a quick look in the chat, just check anything. So Larry said about, so Larry said, why are the G flat and the B flat? So I'll take it, he's talking about maybe the blues, what is G flat? B flat. Yeah, I'm not sure what you mean by that, but you can put that question again and I'll answer that. So Liz asked the question: Is chord the same as scale? No, they're not the same. So the scale generally contains all the notes in that key, and the chord just has the thirds, the whatever intervals you've got, but it's not as many of the notes. Okay, so if you had all the notes of the C major scale, you wouldn't obviously play them all together. It'd just be like a mosh of sound. Okay, so you're picking out certain intervals to make a chord up. Okay, so a chord's got to have just three notes or more. Okay, to make a chord. Just check that a bit. Okay, so I think it's okay there. So triads. So we chatted about triads. Triads are 3 notes. You can see the C on top, which makes the 4th note, but it's the same as the bottom C. So C triad. Okay, if a pianist or guitarist played that together, that'd be a chord. If I'm playing it separately, it's an arpeggio. Okay, and then underneath, the minor triad. So these triads are root, thirds, and fifths, and the octave on top. So the first one, the major triad's with just a major third, so that's the E, and it's with a minor third, the E flat, for the minor triad. So we drop the E down a half step. Okay, so that's a triad. And then we talk about, so if you look in the PDF booklet, I've put some of the 7th arpeggios as well. So I've put the main arpeggios that I think is a good idea to learn. If we chat a bit about sharps and flats, these are often called problems. So lots of notes have a sharp and a flat name. Okay, so that might have been what Larry was asking about before. Okay, so if you look at this diagram, these are the notes up to the 5th fret on the E string. Okay, both of these, but the top one is with the notes written as sharps, and the bottom one with the notes written as flats. Okay, on the piano, these are the black notes, the sharps and the flats. Okay, so if you look between F and G, you've got F sharp or G flat. Okay, if you look between G and A, you've got G sharp or A flat. So G sharp and A flat, the same notes. F sharp and G flat, the same notes. Now, when do we use the sharp and when do we use the flat? Well, it's all related to what key you're in. So if you're in a sharp key, so you've got some keys that have sharps, okay, like G major has 1 sharp, F sharp. Okay, if you were playing in G major and you had an F sharp, you would call it F sharp, you wouldn't call it G flat. But in the key of, there's a key called G flat major. Okay, now if you're in a key of G flat major, it'd be a bit weird if you called it F sharp. Okay, so it's just they sound the same, but it just depends what key you're in. Okay, now it does matter when you're reading music, because you wouldn't have like a G flat and an F sharp in the same in the same kind of piece of music, really, in the same key. Okay, it just makes it these kind of, so it's a kind of music theory rule which makes it a lot easier to read music. All right, it's not as important when you're well, it's not important when you actually play the note. It sounds the same when you're chatting about the note. If you said G flat and it was an F sharp, it doesn't really matter. But when it comes to reading and writing music, it's quite important because it just visually makes it a lot easier to read. Okay, so the same thing happens on all the frets. So if you go down, so if you go from, the rule is kind of, if you're going down, it's the sharp below. So going down from A, it's G sharp. If you're going down from A to a flat, it's just the flats on the A. Okay. So it's kind of not really, yeah, I think that kind of summarizes why you have sharps and flats. Okay, just having a quick look in the chat. Okay, so there's a question. What are the rules? So here we go here. So what are the rules to use notes from an arpeggio on chord changes? Okay, try and get that up. Doesn't come up. I don't know exactly what you mean there. On chord changes, well, when you change chords, you just build an arpeggio on that new chord. I think that's what you mean. So if you're in C, and then you basically use the notes from C chord. So C's, E's, and G's, and then if it changes to say a G chord, then you use the chord tones from G, B, and D, for example. That's the root, third, and fifth. So as you change chords, you use the new set of chord tones from that new chord. You don't just use chord tones from the key that you're in and then disregard the chord change. Okay, so I think that's what you mean. So yeah, when you change chord, you use the new chord tone. Yeah, so Alpha made a good point with blowers, which by that he means brass players. They're very, very often in flat keys. So guitarists like sharp keys, E, A, G, those kind of keys. Sax players, trumpet players, they like F and B flat. So if you look at if you start playing jazz, you'll see a lot of jazz blues are traditionally in the key of F and B flat. Okay, that's to suit the blowers or the wind players. Okay. Oh yeah, so Rat just put there, it's talking about inversions. Okay, so an inversion is when you play, you don't start on the root note. So if I just go back here, so you can play, so for example, someone might put C over E, so put a line and put an E. That means playing an E in the bass. So you've got so then you do play an E in the bass, okay? That's a first inversion because you're using the next note, the first note after the root note. Second inversion is using the fifth, okay? So you might have C over G. So if you listen to someone like Elton John, uses inversions all the time, okay? They sound really nice. And they can also add nice steps into your bass lines, okay? So yeah, inversions another topic, quite interesting topic. But when you're playing the inversions, if you're playing more of the bass line, you'd still just use the same chord tones for the remainder of the notes, okay? So that's inversions. It's a really good question. Right, so circular fifths diagram. If you haven't looked at this, you haven't got it, print it out from the booklet, stick it on your wall. It's got loads and loads of information. I did make a lesson on this. There's so much stuff in here, but this kind of just tells you, it just gives you loads of information. For example, so each major key has a relative minor key, so you can find it by going inside the circle. The relative minor to C is A minor, relative minor to G is E minor, that way. Okay, so you've got all your minor keys in there. You've got chord 1, chord 4, chord 5 that way, and it works anywhere. Chord 1, chord 4, chord 5. So 1G, 4C, 5D, 1D, 4G, 5A. So you've got all these different combinations, okay? And you can use the inner circle and the outer circle. So yeah, there's absolutely tons of information. So I have just checked that video out. In the booklet, actually, I put a link to it. So this is a very, very good way the circle of fifths diagram to start looking at chord progressions and theory. And it's amazing that really music kind of works, is very pattern based. But I think it's important to realise, people create music, and lots of music theory is used afterwards to talk about it, to analyse it, and to work out why things work and how to use, concepts yourself for songwriting, for example. So it's normally done, lots of music theory is normally done afterwards, okay? And we're kind of working out why things sound good. And they generally, nice music that sounds good to your ears generally does follow rules, okay? So if you can obviously break them, and they're broken all the time. But if you've got a rough idea of what sounds good and what these kind of rules are, then it will help you when you give you a framework for creating and for sort of improvising your own bass lines, that kind of thing. Okay, so that was really, just wanted to give you a little idea of the kind of things you should be looking at if you haven't looked at music theory before, and where to go with music theory, why it can help you. I'll put this underneath, so when I put the replay up, I'll put this the link to this, a button on the Foundations Week webpage. Okay, so you'll just be able to download this kind of cheat sheet, which has got all the information I showed you today and a bit more about seventh arpeggios, that kind of thing. Okay, and so download that and just start looking at all of that information. Okay, and I promise you that any theory you learn is going to help you. It's going to enable you to chat to other musicians, and if you're at a jam night and someone says, can we do it, they always do this, the singer, can we transpose it to this key, you'll know exactly what that means. Okay, you could start practicing transposition at home. You could have a bass line and you could move it, work out what key it's in and move it to another key. Okay, so because it's pattern based on the fretboard, you can easily kind of move it into different shapes. Okay, right, just have a little look in the chat again. Okay, what I'm going to do now, I thought I had this camera on, but I didn't, so you haven't been able to see me. But I'm now going to just answer some of the questions that came up from the chat. Do put any questions you've got now in the chat. I'll have a little look through after I've answered the questions that I've already got. Okay, so there is a bit of a delay, but I'll check that afterwards. Okay. So first question for Michael: I'm getting string buzz noise with low action. Can you play right on the fret? So he's saying that he kind of found this, that he was playing on the frets and that was getting rid of the buzz. Well, it's an important question really. Is it just string kind of rattle that you do get with a lower action? Or is it a kind of, if there's a real buzz every time you just play the note, if you're fretting and there's a buzz, then there's something wrong with with your setup basically. You shouldn't be doing that. Okay, if you just play that and there's a real buzz, then there's definitely something wrong. I'll answer a bit more about this in a minute, but Herm just put in there, by the way, there's two Herms. So if you're thinking I didn't put anything in, there's two. He talked about the foam underneath the strings. This is my bit of foam here, which is actually a kind of washing up scourer, because I've lost. I had the official bit of green foam that I bought once, but I lost that and I was making a video, so I just kind of cut this off, which is great. Just need some foam, just put it underneath here, kind of run it under there, and you have it underneath. If you're playing by pick, which is a Carol K hack, you actually tape it on the top. Okay, so this really, you can definitely use it for gigs. If you've got round wounds, it kind of dampens it a bit more. Flat wounds, you don't really need it. Okay, you can put it there, it will give it a little bit more. But when I'm recording with round wounds and I want a dead sound, and that's a really, really good hack, is to put the foam underneath, just slide it underneath. Okay, so experiment, you'll hear a real difference there. Okay, and the Velcro wrap. So I've never used those wraps on the nut. They can do that, so you might have seen them, bit of material and just Velcro them around. So if that's working for you, that's fine. I don't find that I need that. I think it's good to practice sometimes with your muting, just to make sure that you've got really, really good muting, left-hand muting. But lots of people use that a lot if they're playing high up on the bass and playing chords, kind of helps with muting. But if that's working for you, by all means, just use that, okay? But I don't generally, kind of recommend that to anyone. So that's my opinion on that. But yeah, I wouldn't play on the frets, right on the frets, okay? There's too much room for error there if that's the only place you're playing. Generally, I play kind of in the middle, maybe slightly towards slightly just behind the fret, okay? Also, someone wrote in about their third finger kind of bends in a bit to the other finger. Mine does that a bit, so if I end up fretting, then they're quite close together, these two fingers. But that doesn't really matter as long as you're not touching the frets, okay? So I gave a lot of information on the video the other day on Monday. Another important thing I really want to stress is just keeping a very, very light touch here, okay? So you're just pressing down enough to make just make sure you don't get any buzz, but not really hard. Don't press down really hard. I've got slightly, with P basses and thick strings, I tend to have my action a bit higher nowadays. It's not massively high. It's a bit hard to show you really. Can't really see it, I don't think. But on my 5 strings, I have them a little bit lower, but over time I've actually raised them a bit. I used to have them a little bit too low, because if they're low and you've got round wounds, you will make quite a lot of string noise. But also remember that string noise, if you're playing without an amp, you're going to get a load of string noise. Bass is not really, electric bass isn't designed to be played without an amp, so it's not going to sound great, whatever, okay? Unless you've got like a semi-acoustic or hollow body or something like that, or acoustic bass, it will sound okay. So once you get through an amp, a lot of that string noise disappears, and also definitely when you play within a band, okay, a lot of those extra noises disappear, so don't worry too much. But if it's something that really bothers you, then look at flat wounds, okay? They're not as noisy, okay? So it's a good question. If a group is playing a standard blues progression in the key of A, for me to get the right notes, I would use the F sharp minor blues scale. Correct or not? Not correct. So that's from Michael, but it's really, really great question. So the confusion here is you're thinking that, so if we look at the key of A, the relative minor is F sharp minor, okay? Let's just look back, I'll show you here, okay? So if we look at A, F sharp minor, looking on the circle, okay? But that's not really the way that you do it. Remember when I chatted about minor pentatonic scales and blues scales you can use over in major keys. So in the key of A, just use, and that's A major, use A minor pentatonic scale, okay? So you just use the minor, you don't use the relative minor, okay? So that's just a slight misunderstanding that I think you've got, okay? So use the major and the minor of the same name. So in the key of G, use G major pentatonic or G minor pentatonic, okay? How to adjust technique for U bass. I've got mine here. So let's try and shuffle that. A lot. I see these a lot now. They're great. I just use it for. I use them for gigs sometimes when I can't bring the upright along. This is not plugged in, okay? But plugged in, it's got a really great sound, okay? The main way that I alter my technique is I tend to use fingers 1, 2, and 3. Pulling that little thing around, actually, unless you've got it really high up, a little bit harder. Obviously, the frets are much, much closer together. So I tend to just use fingers 1, 2, and 3 a lot. Okay, I don't use my pinky as much. That's the main thing that I do. Obviously, you have to get used to the smaller frets, but it's a really great little instrument. There's nothing really else that I do there. Plucking is a little bit harder. You can find the best place to do that yourself. So just kind of edit your technique. Just change your technique to suit the instrument. But that's the same as picking up other basses, like my Jack Cassidy hollow body bass. It's quite big body, so I have to kind of adjust where I'm plucking. So different instruments, just kind of adjust your technique and try and get the best sound out of the instrument is the best advice I can give generally, okay? I struggle with techniques playing open strings mixed with fretted notes. Oh yeah, that's a really good question from Norman. So that's the Tommy Shannon Texas Shuffle. So he's actually playing this line, but he's putting open E's in. Okay, so if you're having problems, then it's probably the right hand, not the left hand. It's probably the plucking hand. So for this one, I play the line. That line I play with my second finger. Okay, I pluck with my second finger, and I play the open E's with my first finger. So I'm kind of sort of alternating between them. Okay, so try that, and if you're playing rest strokes, so if you're resting from the A string onto the E string, you'll naturally mute it as you go along. Okay, now that is a particularly tricky riff, as lots of you might know if you've been around Greg's Bass Shed for a while, because I've done this video a few times. It's in my blues course as well. It's a tough one to get used to, but once you get it, it's fine. Okay, so if you're having any of these technique problems, then look at what your right hand is doing. Okay, your plucking hand. Okay, and that will probably help you out. So there were all the questions that came in first. So I'm going to have a look back now through the comments. Okay, let's have a little look here. So I'll just try and I'll go back from the beginning. So just give me a minute and just have a little look here. So Alf said something about reading and watching the conductor. I don't know whether that's a question or not, but that's, if you're asking about how do you read and follow the conductor, it's all about where you put your stand, to be honest. If you put your stand a bit lower and you angle it towards the conductor, then you've got them in your kind of peripheral upper vision. Okay, so it's about where you put your music. Okay, that's a common issue. So you're kind of glancing up all the time, and you're not following the conductor all the time, just following it for key points. Okay, when I'm reading music now, I'm always looking ahead a couple of bars, so I give myself a bit of time to look up as well. But if that's what you mean, then make sure you angle your stand correctly. Hopefully I answered that question, Larry, about flats. Hopefully I answered that before. Okay, okay, I'm going to try and add these to the session, these questions. Bear with me, I'll see if I can do that. Okay, yeah. So if you play minor blues scale in C and the others are playing C major, when they hit the C chord, you'll be playing an E flat against. Yeah, that's very, very good question. Basically, that's talking about using the minor blues scale when you're playing a major chord. There is dissonance, but that's what the blues note is. Okay, you don't linger on it too long, but it does cause dissonance. So that dissonance is that bluesy sound. All right, so practice that, and that kind of clash is what gives that sound, basically. Okay. So Tim said knowing the chord tones was a huge step in my playing ability. Definitely helps a lot. Okay. So any tips on creating it? Right, here we go here. Right, any tips on creating a bass line on the fly when playing with a group of ukulele players? Fitting a few chords and words. You want to move away. So he said he wants to move away from root fifths octave as possible. So it can sound too repetitive. Yeah, I mean, overall, on a longer process, the way to get ideas really that I always kind of stress is to analyse other bass players, pick up their ideas of how to build up grooves. If you learn a lot of riffs and a lot of bass lines, then you'll get ideas. Okay, so there's you just build up a vocabulary of riffs and ideas that you can then try and put in. It's very style dependent. So if you've got a kind of Latin thing, then you would, like I showed you that Latin bass line, this kind of a. If you've got disco, you're going to probably do a disco type bass line. So a lot of it's in the rhythm, actually. So it's using different rhythmic ideas. So lots of the note combinations are the same, but you're using different rhythmic ideas to kind of to give you some variety. Okay, but I mean, I suppose that's a big question there. But it's trying to use different ideas, combination of different ideas that you've learned, okay, on the go. So using diatonic chords in major keys, that's what I remembered. So that's basically picking the main chords that you've got in a major key. So you've got another formula for minor keys. I'm pretty sure that I've made a YouTube lesson on this, picking the what chords there are in minor keys. Okay, I'll try and dig that out and put it underneath in the chat. Okay, afterwards. So minor keys have their own set of chords as well, the same way that major keys do. Mike Reed just joined, just been playing a Root 5th 8 Blues Breaker riff to Look in the Mirror. That's great, yeah. So very, 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 very common riffs there. So sitting there, Laura's sitting there with a 2009 U-Bass. It's great, yeah. So many people got U-Bass now. I can see why. So there we go here. What's your amp setting when you play live? Bass, treble, middle. Okay, so what I do when I go into a room, just put everything at 12 o'clock, the bass and treble on the mid. And also, as a side note, make sure you check your gain first. So turn your volume off, set your gain until most amps have a little peak light. When it turn it back from the peak light. So if you've got passive basses, you generally your gain might be as much as kind of 3/4 of the way round. Active basses maybe half, a little bit less. So you set your gain first, then set your bass, treble and mid, and set them to 12 o'clock. And then what I generally do is I boost a bit of mid, but it depends on the room. If the room's very bassy, I then just drop a little bit of bass. I don't generally add a lot of treble, but I might put a little bit of treble if the room's bassy. If it's not bassy, a bit more bass, but generally my treble stays at 12 o'clock. My bass doesn't go much above it, and I kind of change the mids. Okay, and I have on my active basses got an onboard preamp, so I can do some tweaking there. So I use that more than actually the amp EQ. Pedals, got a preamp pedal. I do a little bit of tweaking on that if I'm not using an amp. So yeah, I think I'll make a video about how to set EQs, because it's an interesting topic. Some rooms you're in, it's just impossible. You just can't get a good bass sound. It's annoying if you've got a hollow stage that you set up on. Try and put the amp on something, because otherwise the bass just goes down. So it's a bit of a nightmare. Okay. Use approach notes. Oh yeah, okay. So that's another good. So if you've got any more questions, by the way, just put them in the chat. Yeah, so that's a great idea actually. I think about approach notes and chromatic notes. So they're the notes extra to the chord tones. So they're notes that lead up. So you can build a rough way to do it, especially if you think about a walking line, is to build on the main beats, use the chord tones, and on the kind of not as important beats, use chromatic notes and approach notes. So approach notes can be 2 or 1 fret below or above. Okay. Sometimes you get those from the scale, or just use a chromatic note. Chromatic note is a note that's not in the scale. Okay, so you use those to kind of lead up to or lead down to these kind of framework of chord tones. So that's a good a shout there, Mike. A good approach to use. Okay. So by the way, if I'll just hang around a little bit, so I know I started late. Hopefully most of you caught this. I'll put it on the replay, and those that didn't, if you're seeing this, then please ask me any questions on the discussion board, and I'll answer those throughout the week. Okay, or you can leave a comment if you're seeing this on YouTube. You can leave a comment below. Just leave a comment, and I'll answer those. Okay. So I think I've answered all the questions that I've seen throughout the session, but I'll hang around and see if there's any more. But that's basically it for this session. unless any more questions come up. So yeah, it's been great. Thanks for joining me. Apologies again. So Friday, we've got the next pre-recorded video lesson is out this Friday. So I'm going to chat a bit about groove and the role of the bass player. So that's a pre-recorded video, so we won't have any problems with people joining. So yeah, that's out on Friday. Okay. So here we are. So another question. Let's go here. So any advice for learning the structures of songs? Let's have a think about that. What I generally do is write out a one sheet cheat sheet, and then I'll just put, first of all, this is if I'm working really quickly and I've got to learn loads of songs quickly. I'll just get a cheat sheet. I'll just write intro, how many bars there are, verse, how many bars, chorus, links, bridges, anything like that. It doesn't matter really what you call them. Guitar solo. I'll just basically put the amount of bars. So that would be my first thing there. Okay, work out the key. Then you can roughly just scribble out some chords on the side. So I do that. That for me. If I want to learn something, I've got a lot of time, I might not necessarily write it down. I might just learn it, because if I learn something by memory rather than writing down, it tends to stay in there. If I write it down, then I have to kind of relearn it off the written sheet. But you could have them there as a reminder as well. It's up to you. It's kind of how your brain works. But if you see a framework of the bar numbers, that generally kind of will help you. Okay. So yeah, thanks Michael. There we are. Thanks Rat Rod C. I don't know what your real name is. It's Mickey as well. Thanks. So my pronunciation of I'll put this up here. It's quite funny. The pronunciation of cheat sheet sounds like cheat sheet in Mexican. It means boob. Well, that's great. Cheat sheet. So I'll have to try and not say cheat sheet. I have to try and say cheat sheet. That's my Essex accent dropping the T's there. But yeah, this is the comment that wins the session for me. I'll leave that up there. But yeah, thanks for joining everyone. And apologies again for the problem, the tech problem. There tends to be a tech problem every sort of 4th or 5th live session. But hopefully I caught as many of you as possible. But apologies if you're just watching the replay. Okay, so yeah, thanks a lot, and I'll see you on Friday, or just leave me a message on the discussion board. Cheers.